Welcome everybody to the third episode of my basic guide to League of Legends. I'm Chris, and today we'll be looking at the role of AP Carry. Now, the AP Carry is someone whose primary objective in the game is to do a ton of magic damage to the enemy team.
Let's go!
Now, Ryze is a bit of a peculiar one, because most standard AP Carries build a very sort of well-defined set of items, and these items generally, as you might expect, have a lot of ability power on them. They may have some offsets like magic resist and other tankiness, but Ryze is different. While he does have abilities that scale off of ability power, he also has a mana scaling on his abilities, meaning that if you buy mana items, he will still be doing a fair amount of damage. Now, that different quality allows him to build a different set of items, namely items that provide mana as well as add to the tankiness of his character. So these are items like Banshee's Veil, Frozen Heart, etc. In most cases though, your AP carry will probably build one of two ways. Either Bursty, / Assassin, or Sustained Damage. So, as you can see, I'm going to be going into the mid lane for this game, as most AP carries tend to do in the current metagame. Now, if you're in mid lane, it's probably helpful to leash the blue buff for your jungler. As we see here, we are setting up for the blue buff spawn at 1 minute 55 seconds, and Amumu's just waiting. So, by doing what I just did, attacking the blue buff before the jungler did, I caused it to wrap around the terrain and chase me for a bit, while Amumu got some free damage in. This helps the jungler clear quicker, as well as have more HP when he is done clearing the jungle, so that he can gank. So as I mentioned before, oh, there's a Nocturne. And I get away, just fine. So as I was mentioning before, there are probably two ways that you're going to go about building your AP carry. Bursty or Sustain. Now, the Bursty champions are champions with generally longer cooldowns on their abilities, but those abilities will do a ton more damage, and that means that they just sort of empty out all their skills on you and hope to kill you. Commonly, these champions will want to get ahead early game by abusing that sort of just load dumping power. So, the items that you're probably going to see on these champions include Doran's Rings and quicker, large, AP heavy items like a needlessly large rod and possibly an early Rabadon's Death Cap. For the sustaining side of champions, these are champions that just are generally tanky and build a lot of magic damage. So items that are common to these champions include Rod of Ages, Zonya's Hourglass, Ryze's Crystal Scepter, etc. Stuff that helps them do damage while being able to survive in a fight. Now, as mentioned in the AD Carry guide, AP mid, like any other lane, has the primary objective of farming up during the early game. So, recall the concept of last hitting. Killing minions, with being the one to land the killing blow onto a minion in order to get the gold. As you'll see here, I currently have 18, which is denoted by the purple wizard's hat in the top right corner, the number right next to it at least. And ideally, you want to outfarm your enemy laner just to be ahead in gold, as well as being even or ahead on kills and assists. Now, the one difference between mid lane and bottom lane in terms of farming is that you also have access to the jungle camps because they are so close to the lane. So right now, Amumu is at the Wraith camp, and if I were to communicate with him a bit better, I could probably say I'm going to need to farm the Wraith camp every time they're up, just to get more CS and more gold than my opponent. Another thing you do is go into the enemy jungle and steal the enemy Wraith camp, to prevent them from getting that advantage that they would try to have on you.
Right back at you.
So another difference between bot lane and mid lane is that in mid lane there are bushes on both the top and bottom side of you, whereas in bot lane the jungler pretty much has one major flanking attack angle. Mid lane has two, and Amumu came in for a gank. I forgot to say that I was going to flash and snare, and he didn't stun. It's important, if you're mid lane, to communicate with your jungler when you want to get a kill, because otherwise you waste opportunities like that, and it's not good, because it takes time, or it takes the jungler away from killing camps for a time, and that's time that he's not getting gold or XP. So as I was saying, the jungler has two gank paths into mid, top and bottom side of the lane. However, this also means you have a couple of escape routes. You can either retreat to your tower, or go in the opposite way from which they came. So, generally champions with a sort of a gap maker in mid lane tend to do pretty well because they're really, really difficult to gank. Champions that come to mind include Kassadin. Once he hits level 6, his Rip Walk allows him to basically flash away from a gank. Now granted, that would pretty much help in any lane, but mid lane is where you would most commonly see Kassadin.
An enemy has been slain.
So common starting items for your AP mid lane are pretty much the same as any other lane. You're going to have your boots through pot start, or something to get a bit more damage if you can sustain yourself in the lane. So if you're a champion like Morgana, who has Spell Vamp as her passive, you can start with Doran's Ring, which gives her mana regen, which combined with the Spell Vamp means that she can stay in lane for a while, because she's just passively gaining that health back and gaining mana. So right now, I just recalled after taking blue buff. Now blue buff, for those of you who don't know, increases your mana regen as well as giving you passive cooldown reduction. It is a buff that lasts for a couple minutes and respawns every 5 minutes. Since most mid lanes use mana as their resource, the jungler will tend to feed you the blue buffs, because it just helps you stay in lane a little bit longer without needing to recall, which would keep you away from the lane and the XP and gold. So here, I try to get aggressive onto Ahri, and then I get turret dove by Nocturne and Ahri. Luckily this ends up for a double kill in my favor, and I feel like a boss. So right now, there's no real threat of me dying, despite how low I am, because top lane's in top lane, bottom lane's in bot lane, and the jungler and mid lane are dead. So I kind of farm up the lane, and proceed to go back to the base and buy some items to maintain this lead that I now have in mid lane with a gold advantage. So I think right now I'm about 8 CS ahead of Ahri because I was able to kill her and then push the wave to her turret. She is in no position to get the CS that is currently sitting at her turret and being attacked by it. Now, as a mid lane champion, you have some of the shortest distances to top and mid lane or top and bot lane aside from maybe your jungler roaming about the map. Roaming about the map allows you to put pressure onto lanes and develop an advantage for your side lanes. So right now, Ahri is already in bot lane, and she's going to pick up some kills for herself. Now this is unfortunate because I had just recalled, and I make the decision after seeing her bot lane to go to bot lane myself. Now normally this is a terrible idea because you're already way behind your enemy in terms of like being at the lane when they need you. So not only are you not really helping because you're late, you're also not in mid lane getting your CS, getting your experience. However, since I do have blue buff, I am able to help take Dragon for the team. And Nocturne being dead, as well as Ahri recalling after killing bot lane, there's no pressure onto Dragon from their team.
Let's go, let's go.
And like I said in the support video, warding is very important to maintain vision and help make decisions. So in mid lane there are going to be two common areas for you to ward, and it's basically just the entrances slash exits from the enemy jungle in close to mid lane. So that ward I have next to the enemy Wraith camp, we'll see if Nocturne comes into the river from that exit, which would mean that he either recently got Wraiths or red and wants to probably come kill me. Now, there are a couple of styles to playing AP mid, and it's basically either you're pushing the lane and then roaming about the map, or you're just passively farming the lane in the middle of the lane. I think I said lane too many times there. But some champions have a sort of weakness, as in all champions have a sort of weakness. For Ryze, he does not really farm at his turret too well at early levels, because if there's a bunch of minions and they're getting hit by turret, they're taking a lot of damage, and sometimes you'll need to use abilities because his auto attack damage is too low to get the CS. See, right now I just missed one CS to the turret, gonna miss another because it's hard to sort of line up your last hits at your turret unless you really know your champion well. And I don't really know Ryze too well, despite the fact that this game I don't do too badly with him.
Let's go, let's go.
So here I am taking blue buff for myself again. Ryze's passive is... it's probably one of my favorite passives in the game, because it just reduces all of your other cooldowns by 1 second every time you use an ability, and it basically turns him into a machine gun sort of spellcaster. So there, after blue buff, I saw Ahri with the ward in their jungle. And this time I don't make the decision to go after her into bot lane, because I figure she shouldn't really be getting kills because we saw her moving down, and bot lane had ample time to react. So instead I just kind of pushed the wave to her turret again. And there she is coming back up through her jungle, as spotted with the wards, so I back off.
Right back at you. Come on already.
So right now I don't think I'm doing all that I can to really sort of drive home my advantage in mid lane, because right now I'm up a level and up in money, I think. Actually no, Ahri has more kills than I do.
Enemy rampage.
Right back at you.
So one thing that you might notice in a lot of your games is people typing MIA or Mia into chat. What this means is that the enemy laner is missing from the lane, and they're probably coming to kill either one of your other lanes, or they may have just recalled.
Already.
So when I typed MIA that time, it meant that I didn't know where Ahri was, and it turns out she ended up going bot lane and getting a double kill.
Right back at you.
So here I'm just placing the other ward that is crucial to mid lane map awareness. It'll see if the enemy jungler is coming from around the blue side, although I guess in retrospect, a better ward would be placed with vision of the river. And there I burned my flash, and I'm not really sure why I did that because now I can't catch Nidalee. I make some really bad decisions this game, but that's part of the game. Sometimes you just make bad decisions.
Come on already.
So as you'll see, Ryze does a ton of damage, and in a very short amount of time because of his passive and the base cooldowns of his abilities. Now, not only does he do a ton of burst damage, he also does a ton of sustained damage for the same reason. His cooldowns are just short and practically non-existent.
Don't hold me up. Right back at you.
Oh yeah, so one thing you may note is that on my skill bar you can't see Q, W, E, or R where you would normally see it. This is because I have all my abilities set to Smartcast. Now for those of you who don't know, Smartcast is basically, instead of having to press a button and then click on the enemy champion, all you need to do is just have your mouse over the enemy champion and then press the button. So if I have my mouse over top of Ahri, say I'm spamming right click on her, and mashing all of my abilities, they will just cast automatically without needing to click every time I press Q, W, E, or R. Okay, so here we see Ahri once again heading down through her jungle towards bot lane. So I decide to give chase, because this time I'm pretty close to her. However, I do get caught, and it's pretty close, but I eat both sides of the Q and die. Yeah, at least at number 1. So once again, blue buff is spawned, and since I'm dead right now, I'm just gonna head straight to blue buff after I respawn.
Let's go, let's go.
And as you'll note from the items, none of my items really have ability power on them at the moment. Banshee's Veil gives me magic resist, health, and mana. Glacial Shroud gives me mana and armor, as well as some cooldown reduction to make my skills even on a short cooldown. Obviously.
Don't hold me up. Right back at you.
It should be known that this is not the only way to play Ryze. I mean, it's not atypical to see a regular sort of sustainy AP build on a Ryze. This is just the way I like to play him because it's pretty fun because you just live forever and consequently do damage forever.
Right back at you.
Also, I would highly recommend playing Ryze to anyone who is sort of just starting to get into the game, because he's a pretty cheap champion, only 450 IP, and he really does teach you a lot of he really does help enhance some basic elements of gameplay when you are starting out. Specifically smart casting, because smart casting will save your fingers when you play Ryze, because if you were to play him without smart casting, you're like clicking a ton, and it's just it gets uncomfortable after a while.
Let's go, let's go. Come on already. Can you handle this?
An enemy has been slain.
Also, it's probably recommended that you buy your second level of boots at an earlier time before 25 minutes, because stuff like this will happen where you're chasing a Lux forever and you can't catch her. And here I should have kept trying to cut her off instead of end up behind her.
Right back at you.
And our Riven is oblivious to anything that's happening, because she's still fighting Nidalee instead of cutting off Lux, even though she can only really go in one direction right now. It's okay, Leekson lands a pretty decent Q, and gets away safely, and Nidalee gets stunned, snared, GG.
An enemy has been slain.
Let's go, let's go.
So in addition to taking your own blue buff, it's highly advantageous to you if you deny the enemy blue buff. So right there I was just checking to see if it was spawned, and if it was possible for me to take it. Unfortunately it was not spawned, and I left a sad, sad Ryze.
Right back at you.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
Don't hold me up.
So that level advantage from before is now gone because Ahri has been able to roam to bot lane a lot and get some kills.
Come on already. Let's go, let's go.
An ally has been slain.
Can you handle this? Zap. Don't hold me up.
So the enemy Lux uses Clairvoyance and sees me going to blue. Now, if you look at the minimap, you would have seen Ahri also head towards here, so I have to pull the blue back. She tries to throw a Q to steal the blue buff, but it doesn't work out.
Come on already.
And here we're going to see a little bit of aggression coming into mid lane between Riven and I, because between the two of us we have a snare and a stun. So there goes a snare and some damage, and then Nocturne comes in. So I back away to not be underneath the enemy turret, and I start to give chase again. And here I get to like 13 HP, and I use Flash when I probably didn't need to, but you never know when an enemy Nidalee might be nearby, or if Ezreal uses his ult in a certain way, and I get away alive. Unfortunately, Nidalee decides to tower dive Riven, and despite the fact that Riven can live for a bit, she does go down. So here I'm finishing my second big item, which is the Frozen Heart, which gives more armor and mana and cooldown reduction than the Glacial Shroud. And there you kind of see me sort of go through the shop menu, not really knowing what to buy. Because a lot of times when I'm playing Ryze, I just like lose sight of what I'm supposed to be building, so I'll end up building weird stuff. I think I realized I have some mana problems during fights, so like I'm casting too many spells when I don't have blue buff. So I resolved to end up buying a Athene's Unholy Grail, which means when I get a kill, I get mana, which is always nice. And here I could either make the decision to go to Dragon instead of helping Teemo and Amumu escape, because Amumu's like one hit away from dying, and Teemo's a Teemo and he'll get away no matter what. So one weakness about Ryze in terms of offensive pressure is that while he can push the lane with his ultimate, because that's the only way he's going to get any major amount of AoE damage, his ability to take down a turret is really, really weak. Because normally, if you're an AD carry, you're going to have a bunch of attack damage, which means that you hit the turret for a lot. And here we get a kill onto Nidalee. But if you're an AP carry, you're going to have a lot of AP. And if your AP is higher than your AD, then 40% of your AP gets added to your auto attacks on turrets. So Ryze, if you build him the way I build him, by getting a bunch of mana, he doesn't really have that much AD or AP, so his ability to take on turrets is really, really weak. And here we see a really bad Lee Sin play, because he's just getting kited, and then ignited, and dieted.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
I can't believe I just said that. Dieted? What the hell? But yeah, so here I start to buy the components of a Athene's Unholy Grail. It probably would have been better if I had gone for something that was a bit more damage oriented, so like a Ryze Crystal Scepter, which means I could stick to my targets better, or an Abyssal Scepter, which makes me tankier and gives me damage. And in retrospect, it probably would have been a good idea to buy a Tear of the Goddess early on, because when you Ryze, like I said, you cast a ton of spells, which means that your tier gets stacked up and you get a bunch of mana.
Right back at you. Don't hold me up. Right
Oh, another thing I forgot to mention. In addition to the regular ability power champions that are either bursty or sustainy, another type of champion that you might see in mid lane are the sort of anti-mages. Now these are people that can jump to you and deal a ton of damage, so they're people like Talon or Pantheon. People like that will pretty much ruin your day because you aren't exactly the tankiest type of champion. This is the reason why I really like Ryze in mid lane, is because he is actually that type of tanky champion. So I think this game is winding down right about now. So I'd like to remind everyone that these guides, they're not sort of you now know how to play any champion in mid lane guide. It's sort of just a primer to say, hey, this is what AP mid entails. If you're interested in it, I highly recommend going to a champion-specific guide either on Solo Mid or LoL Pro or clgaming.net. And the enemy team surrenders, and that's GG. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.